Famously known as the Prince of Traveler. I mean, he was an explorer. He just wanted to see the world, go beyond the leaps and bounds of the known world. He started the journey from Morocco. He was 21 and wanted to visit Mecca at that point of time. And so, there's a saying that if you want to explore the world, you should take the road which is less traveled. And he, in fact, actually did that. So at that point of time, there were three roads from Morocco which led to Mecca, and he took the one which was actually the less traveled. And the journey was supposed to be for 16 months, but he ended up being in Morocco after 24 years of travel. So, and the legacy and the book and everything that is there, which Ibn Battuta wrote when he was back, is actually the byproduct of the life that he has lived and the world that he has explored. So that is Ibn Battuta, the Prince of Travelers.
Yeah, so this book was written in 1355, just to give a broad setting, and the book was, in fact, dictated to another person. Pratishtha, tell us, he comes to India at some point of time. Where does he go? And I know Delhi is one of the places where he goes, and you've been working on this part of the story. So tell us about this, the Battuta's contact with India. What does he see? What is the culture that he experiences?
So, Ibn Battuta, while he was traveling and when he reached India and he met, and because he was a courtier and he was always seen, he was received by the royal courts everywhere he went, he came, when he reached Delhi, he of course went to the royal courts and was with the Sultan at that point. More than that, I mean, who he met in Delhi, what he saw in Delhi, what I find really fascinating, not just about Ibn Battuta, but about this UNESCO project, is the todayness of it. How we're talking about a traveler who traveled in the 14th century, and we are talking at the same time about an app that retraces his footsteps. So, and it is that, like, for a young Indian, for a young person in India or in any country where all he's been, it is very interesting to see how a man in that time traveled all these places, which we inhabit those spaces. We inhabit, say, a city like Delhi or the other places that he went all the way, he went down south, etc., etc. But we ourselves have not visited a lot of those monuments which are right next to our houses, right next to the places where we go out for shopping. And how much he wrote about them, how much he explored, how intricately and in what a detailed fashion he wrote about the lifestyle, the habits of the people here, and how Indians, even today, have a lot of those habits. They still continue with a lot of those practices. A lot have changed, of course, but a lot still continue to live on. So, in fact, I was just talking to someone and this thing came up wherein we thought that in India, the ancient, the medieval, and the modern kind of coexist. It just depends which interaction you end up having. It just depends where you end up going. And while I was retracing Ibn Battuta's footsteps in Delhi, I had an interaction with that historical part of India that is very much there, maybe forgotten, maybe abandoned, maybe in tatters, maybe very well known like the Qutub Minar, etc. But still, it kind of is an amalgamation of the past and the present. And I, as someone who is not a student of that part of history, I thought it was really exciting for me to do this because it gave me a chance to know about a traveler. I consider myself as someone who travels a lot. And when I found out what he did in those 24 years of painful travel within which he lost family members, people were being born, people were being killed, lots of things were happening, a personal journey, it's like you read that text, it's like really the growing up of Ibn Battuta. It's like a Bildungsroman that you read along. So for me, Ibn Battuta and the project, more than it being about where he went and exactly what he saw, which will be there, which is there as a part of the project, it is the idea, the very philosophy of the travel that I found really exciting.
Yeah, and again, just to put some of the context, when he came to India, the Tughlaq Empire was, holding power in Delhi. So this is also a time when Ibn Battuta is meeting a particular sort of big empire in India. So what did he do when he came to Delhi? You're mentioning outside that he was a Qadi or in the justice.
Yeah.
Tell us something about
So
that.
that's really fascinating. So that's, I think, a true explorer spirit is. So when he was entering India, and it's mentioned that he was entering from the Hindu Kush region, so he got to know that if you gift something to Muhammad Tughlaq, he will eventually gift you something which is bigger than the size of the gift that you do. So he tried and arranged an entire, a carnival of things. So there was like camels, presents, and everything. He borrowed all of that from some of the merchants, came to India with all of that, and Muhammad Tughlaq became so happy seeing that, and he was taken aback, like, this guy traveling from Morocco and coming to India and still have so many gifts for me. And that's how he started gaining position in the empire. And once he was witnessed and he was seen by the reign and the empire and everything, so he became the Qadi, so which is like a judge. And so that's really fascinating about Ibn Battuta, is that wherever he went or wherever he traveled to, he actually held up a position of some influence. Like, his ship was wrecked in Maldives, and he ended up Maldives in just his innerwear, as per his account. But he ended up marrying the princess of the king. So, imagine having nothing and then still making your way up. And not just one time, it's every time, everywhere you go. And that's what is really, really fascinating. And that's what he did in Delhi. And stayed there for 6 years, and even married and had children, and then started the journey from Delhi as an ambassador to China. So,
And you mentioned he also goes to Aligarh in
yes,
between? Yeah.
yes. So when he started from Delhi, he was actually on an envoy, and Muhammad Tughlaq assigned him as an ambassador to the Chinese empire at that point of time. So he, along with 140 horsemen and a lot of gifts for the Chinese emperor and the royal eunuch, everyone started. The entire position started from Delhi, and there were some revolts which were happening near Aligarh at that point of time. So Ibn Battuta, being himself, he thought that, let me take this under my hand and let me crush the revolt here. So he actually went there outside of Aligarh. There's a place called Jalali, which is about 20 kilometers where the revolts were happening. So he went and fought, and then he actually crushed the revolt. But what happened that after a couple of days, he was doing a recce there, and he was captured by the rebels. And once he was captured, he was taken to this kafna, which is a hideout in the actual language, and he was about to be executed. And he thought that my life is over. I mean, the commander just asked 2 of the guards to take him and execute him right there at the banks of the Kali Nadi. And something miraculous happened. And this was the actual prophecy of Ibn Battuta. The soldiers just said that, do you want to go? Do you want to live? And he just said yes. And he managed to escape that. But there come the difficult part where, he didn't know where he was heading to. He wanted to get back to Aligarh, to the Reen and everything, but he couldn't make it. And that's when the prophecy struck, and he met Dilshad, which was told to him when he was at the Nile basin, that you will travel to India and you will meet a person in a dire time, by the name of Dilshad, and who will help you to come out of that dire time. And then when Ibn Battuta met this guy, he almost fainted, and this guy put him on his back and got him back to Aligarh. And that's when he realized that what is this, with this close encounter, that what is he doing? What what is the meaning of the life that he's searching for, what does he want to do. And that's a very fascinating account of Aligarh. And that's why this project is really important, because it's so relevant. Otherwise, you wouldn't have known, Aligarh being really near to Delhi, you wouldn't have known that such kind of thing ever happened.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm personally a fan of Tintin. Many of you must have read Tintin at some point, and this idea of Ibn Battuta is very. If you read the Tintin series, it's very similar. There's this idea of Tintin suddenly getting, or at least pretending that there are revolutions from above to save him, and it's a pure adventure. And I can just imagine just the amount of adventures that he must have had. You mentioned about the todayness of the Battuta project. Any specific examples? When you sort of started, and you yourself have traveled a lot. So what sort of do you feel you're a modern day Battuta?
No, that'd be too much. No, because he knew where he was going. So that's one difference between me and him, is that he knows where he wants to go, and I have absolutely no idea. But the interesting thing about the todayness that you're talking about is that, like I was talking about the app, I don't know if we can probably show one of the photographs from the app. I would love for you to see, and it is, just look at where all this man went. It is, and it's not like he was only doing sea voyage. He is on the road, he's on land, he's done on horseback, on he's traveled in all possible ways. And he's touched so many places. Us, with all the air travel and all the luxury that we have, how much of this can we even do in today's day and age? And this man actually did everything. And so the interesting thing about the todayness, the technology of the app, which is also a part of the project, is that we can actually just touch one of these little red pins, and it tells us when Ibn Battuta went there, what he wrote about the place, and also a little bit of our own background research about the place. And of course, our contributions are more in the Indian part of the journey, but as a whole, this is a much bigger project. One very important thing that I think Ibn Battuta project has made me realize is the relevance of language. I'm someone who's always very sensitive towards the idea of language. And when we read his works, even if we read lots of translations, because one does not read the original very well, Persian, even if one reads, one is very slow, I'm very slow. But when one realizes that he, in a time where lots was being translated also, by the way. It was an era where translations were rampant and people knew more than one language. He chose to write in his mother tongue, which is something to learn from. We should not feel inhibited if we think that we only know that one little language, because that one little language can at least let us put our ideas out there. Then there would be people someday who would want to translate it into howsoever. Ibn's work have been translated into all possible world languages, all of the European languages, a lot of the Indian languages as well. So I think that the significance of language as a medium for not just for cultural propagation, but also for the generations to come is a very important. This is another form of travel which Ibn's work has done, because his travel is not just geographical travel, but the work has traveled in a different way in time and space, so that we are able to consume it today, enjoy it today, read it today.
Just to add to the language point, there's a very interesting thing about Aligarh. So the word that I said, kafn, in Arabic, it would actually mean a cave. And in the 18th and the 19th century, when his work was being translated, when the researchers didn't actually travel to the place and would just literally translate, so they wrote Kafna as cave in Aligarh. Now, when you go to Aligarh, it's a flat land. You can't possibly find a cave there. It was with this research and with some other works, we found out that Kafna could not just mean cave, but it could also mean a hideout. And that was something fantastic to know about, that how if you just pertain just to the language and don't have the feel of the place, you can really restrict yourself. And that's what also brings in the todayness and the relevance of the Ibn Battuta's work.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Abhishek. So just tell us about this project. What is the project? How was it conceived? And what is it trying to do? And how can people access this project?
So whatever we are researching is actually going into the public domain. So this project is part of the UNESCO Silk Route project, and Electronic Village, which is the cultural partner of UNESCO, is doing the Ibn Battuta bit. So what we are doing is, we are researching, we are video logging, we are going to these places, we are trying to find out whatever we can of the city, not just from what it was 700 years ago, but what is it in the modern times. And all of this is translating into an app, which you can download, go see. If you're in Delhi, it'll give you a notification that this is a place where Ibn Battuta traveled to. There's the video of this. You want to visit to this. This is the background of that. And the actual relevance is that it is actually making every individual more of an explorer, which Ibn Battuta was actually, through the work which he has done, and after all of it, which is being translated into the public domain. That is why it is so relevant, and that is why everyone can access it, everyone can know about it. That's what the project entails.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, you can actually now retrace the footsteps of Ibn Battuta. Which is the remarkable thing to me. I study migration, and I often ponder upon, where did these people go? Where did Gandhi go? It would be so nice to have a map of all the places Gandhi went. Gandhi was also, a very famous traveler. Question to Pratishtha. Are there any aspects of Ibn Battuta's social life, I don't know, his marriage or his friendships, his relationships, which strike you as being either remarkable or things which have changed over time or things which are, still the same?
Yeah. Before I answer your question, Chinmay, there is a map for Gandhi in the Gandhi ashram in Delhi near Rajghat. They have a beautiful map which lights, which tells you where all he went. So, well, yes, there are aspects of his social life. In fact, there is there's this one place in Delhi, the Begumpur Mosque, which is also my favorite monument now that I've visited it, after having lived in that place for God knows how many years, where he received the news of his daughter's passing. One of his little girl who kind of got some disease, passed away, and it was there. So yeah, social dynamics have always been there throughout the commentary. And the most interesting thing, Chinmay, I think, is how even in those times, there was this, this bonhomie between the various religious groups, the various communities. He talks extensively about the Hindus, about Indian Muslims, about other castes, about other religions as well. And he talks not just about how they dress up, he talks about what kind of food they eat, what kind of practices. In fact, for Hindus, he talks about the sati practice, and he said that he saw it, and he said that he had heard that people have stopped doing it, and that it was being discouraged a great deal. And he extensively speaks about how Hindus' way of eating is different from the Muslim way of eating, and yet I see them often eating together. For example, he says that Hindus do not share a big platter of food with a group of people all sitting together and eating, but they'd much rather have their own little plate in which they'd eat. And yet they do sit together and eat, with other people. So there is this huge idea of secularism that one can also see in Ibn Battuta's travel, which kind of makes you feel like it was almost a non-issue at one point. And so yes, that social context is a very important part of his, and not just his personal social issues, about which of course he talks, his friendships, his relationship with the king, the relationship of the king with his family members, with his courtiers. He talks about all of that, talks about gossip. There are places where he even says that now I'm about to share a bit of gossip. So yeah, that's all a part of his travel diaries. But so therefore, it is a very rich document. It is not it is an enjoyable document to read also, right? It is not just boring piece of I went here, I met him, etc., etc. It's also they were doing this, and I thought I should also do this. Like for example, I really like the bit where he talks about the pan. he describes how Indians eat pan and how they take this leaf and what all they add to it and how they have it and they use it as a mouth freshener and food habits. I personally am someone who loves to know more about culinary habits, and he talks at length about all of this.
I think that's really fabulous, and that's why his account really stands out. I mean, there were a lot of contemporary travelers, Al-Burani, who came to India, but all of them had agenda to document something or to witness something and go back to report to. The agenda of Ibn Battuta was that he had no agenda. He would just write whatever he would experience. And I think that's really make the account really rich and fabulous.
I mean, just to play devil's advocate here, because I work in the academia, and we are often asked about, how do we even trust this account, right? How do we know that such a guy existed, and how do we know that what he said is, true or false? And like she said, he had a penchant for gossip. So was there, is there a way to actually say that, this?
I didn't say he had a penchant for gossip. I said he mentions
parts of it. Yeah, sorry. How do you make sense, or do you say that this is plausibly true, and are there also accounts which you feel are potentially it never happened, and this could be a part of imagination?
So this is definitely not part of imagination. He was in India, and this has been proven by reading the other accounts which were made in India at that point of time by other writers. They mention Ibn Battuta, they mention the details that Ibn Battuta mentioned. And that is the most fantastic part of his travel and his account. He was mugged 5 times throughout his journey. He wrote journals. They were taken away from him when he was actually kidnapped by the rebels. All his possessions were taken from him. So when he reached back to Morocco, he actually had nothing. And he just recollected everything and started dictating it to the writer. And then, when I met Professor Irfan Habib in Aligarh, he specifically mentions that Ibn Battuta's account is so detailed that he would know the name of the son of some duke of the reign or the king. So he mentioned the name of the duke, the son of the Duke of Aligarh at that point of time, and it actually matches the account. And imagine if you have traveled, so he was in Delhi about in the later 1330s, started writing in 1352. Imagine after 15, 16 years, you're still able to recollect the name and able to dictate it so that it can be written down. And that's where the trueness or the authentication of his work comes in, that whatever he has written is absolutely, it's transpiring in other literatures also, which are other accounts which are here in India, which are written there, and everywhere, other parts of world as well, in Maldives, in Middle East, in all of those areas.
See, I'm sorry, I agree with you in part, but I also believe that, every act of writing is also, an act of politics, an act of decision, an act of choice. So it's not that he wrote everything, right? He picked and chose. And there were things that he decided to go on about, and there were things that he decided to keep quite concise. Now, obviously, it has been debated many times whether it was because he was narrating it later on, and he'd probably, poor thing, forgotten in greater details of those bits that he writes just in smaller this thing. But the truth is that, we don't know whether it was 100% the truth of the sacred truth of that time, but it was definitely his version, and he definitely existed, because like he has said, he was even in Burani's accounts, although they never really met each other, even though they were there at the very same time in the Delhi courts, they never really met each other, but the accounts are very comparable. So clearly both of them were writing about something that both of them were viewing, and so they are very comparable histories that they narrate. But I don't know, of course it is sometimes I feel that while I was reading, maybe you also felt it, that it is very subjective. It is like a very personal account, right? There are things that he says that I could have lived without him telling me that, yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of especially this investment and memory. the more you're invested in the subject, often you remember it more. And students of sociology, if any, out here will remember this famous book by M.N. Srinivas called The Remembered Village. And he lost all his notes studying a village over many, many years, and then he reconstructed this whole study, and it's a classic. I think, so sometimes it's good to lose your notes. I think that's the sort of takeaway, of this. You mentioned his views on many things. Did he talk about women? Does he talk about women in his book?
Not that there are special sections dedicated to women, but women do appear every now and then as an important character. One famous woman that appears is Razia Sultana, who has been given a lot of justice, I'd say done a lot of justice by Ibn Battuta, because she was a very disputed figure. People did not know whether to love her or hate her. And from what I read in Ibn Battuta, I felt that he did not dislike her. He liked her. He liked her courage. He liked the fact that she kind of became this sort of rebel, even though she had to pay later on with her life. So, no, women do appear. His family women do not really appear. His children appear, which can be also, girls. So yeah, that. But yeah, he's given women the kind of overlooking that century men would have done, I believe.
Any observations on this for you?
I think it's the same. Stands same.
Yeah. So this project of Electronic Village, you mentioned you have some awards as well as part of that. Do you want to talk about that?
So, well, I'll talk a little bit about it. They've been doing this sort of Ibn Battuta award, which for the last 12 years for travel books. And they give it to any book that talks about traveling and how it like narrative, travel diaries or travelogue or memoir of travels. And it's been going on for 12 years, and this year they'd be doing it in Morocco, from what I remember, yes. And apart from that also, I think eventually I'll read that message, and you must tell us whose message it is, because there's a very special message that comes straight to us from the UAE that I have been entrusted with, that I'll be reading eventually. I'll request Chinmay to talk about it.
Sure. I think we'll probably read the message now. We'll have to take Q&A just in a bit. This is a message from His Excellency Mohammad Ahmed Al Suwaidi, who's from UAE, and Pratishtha will just read out this message.
Okay, so I must tell you why I am the one who gets to read the message, because this is something very special to me. His Excellency is known as the man of letters in the Arab world, and there is something that we very recently realized that I and him share is this. I'm slightly embarrassed now that but no, I'm happy also. Is the knighthood. I have been very recently knighted by the Italian government, and His Excellency, yes, and His Excellency too has the same knighthood. And so when he found out about it, he thought that it would be a welcome thing for me to read his message. His is a 2-page message, or 1.5 page something, and it's very interesting because he talks about India and the Arab world. He says, and it is entitled India and the Arabs, the fascinating convergence of the Oriental cultures. The Arab culture holds a great appreciation for India and its name in particular. Beside the rich influence of India and its culture have manifested in numerous ways of beauty in the Arabs' life for ages. So it has been quite common to use the equivalent of India in their language. Hind is always used there. As a well-known name for women. They say Hind for women. Moreover, they naturally related the one of the sharpest swords to India and named their sons that way. These cultural manifestations were not tied to post-Islamic era. It stretches even long before the Islamic religion have emerged. India has an old and lasting presence in Arabic culture. The renowned Arabian journey of Ibn Battuta in the 14th century considered India the most prominent cultural geographical site in the voyage. It was the place where Shams al-Din of Tangier alias Ibn Battuta, spent the longest part of his journey, and about which he later recounted exceptionally valued pieces of information and a lot of stories and anecdotes. We know today that there are 3 translations of this book from Arabic into Urdu. The first is made by Maulvi Muhammad Hussain, which is dated in 1913 and published in Delhi under the title The Wonders of Travels of Sheikh Ibn Battuta as Safarnama. The second is conducted by Ahmad Ghafri al-Nawadi, and it was published in Karachi in 1961 under the title Safarnama Ibn Battuta. The third copy of the translation is an effort of Maulvi Abdurrahman Khan and published in Delhi in 1972 along with Essence of the Spectator's Marvels, which means the book of Sheikh Ibn Battuta. Arab authors wrote about India as early as 10th century. Abu al-Rayani issued one of the greatest anthropological books, the book confirming what pertains to India, whether rational or despicable. Alongside al-Masoudi's Meadows of Gold and Mines of Gems, Marvels of India, which was also published and edited in Arabic language, all the mentioned books still distinguish prominent in the Islamic literature heritage. There, travel literature and diaries are of high priority among the concerns of Al-Suwaidi Cultural House, because the journey and its routes and travelers with their diaries are documenting, as always did, the details of the lives in the specific society they visit. Especially when they reach out for the ancient nations and converging, the situation we are attempting to redefine and embrace with much care once again through our traveling and tracing the steps of the great trotter Ibn Battuta in Indian geography and other geographies. In previous years, we verified a number of the ancient and modern books on travel to India. Our annual prize is awarded this year to an Arab traveler from Egypt to India for writing a book being published recently, holding the title Glee of Gods, which is the fruit of a 40-night tour in Indian cities. Our expeditions will continue on tracking down Ibn Battuta's footsteps in India, hoping to distribute Ibn Battuta Prize in the future at a ceremony held in India. We regard India as a mine of humane knowledge and beauty, looking forward to accomplish much more by cooperation of our cultural institutions and similar Indian foundations. Muhammad Ahmad Al-Suwaidi, Abu Dhabi, in January 2019.
Yeah, I think this tells you, this close connection, that Ibn Battuta still evokes, connecting countries today in the 21st century as some sort of a shared heritage, a person from history connecting countries today. Unfortunately, we can't travel as he did. We don't have probably, that many thieves and bandits, but we have borders. We have political borders.
No, we have thieves and bandits.
We have thieves and bandits also, plus borders, strong borders. And so it's very difficult to travel like Ibn Battuta. But the good news is that if you do travel, you can get an award from the Ibn Battuta Awards. And if you forget your notes on the way, you can still write a book like Ibn Battuta.
I just wanted to mention one little thing. It is that everywhere in this letter, His Excellency has written Ibn Battuta. While so for us Indians, like Chinmay mentioned to begin with, the biggest popular cultural reference right now is the song Ibn Battuta Bagal Mein Joota, which is written by Gulzar Saab. And I was speaking to him and he said, you cannot call him Ibn Battuta. You must call him Ibn A Battuta, because he is from. That reference of from comes with the A. So you have to say. So I have myself added the A while I was reading the letter. The letter says Ibn Battuta.
All right. So we'll open up for some questions, maybe 3 or 4 questions. Yes, the gentleman here. Should we take 2, 3 questions? Yeah. So we'll take 3 questions and then feel free to.
Beautiful bibliophiles, all of you, it's such a blessing to be here in one of the most coveted literary events, not only in India but the entire world, and such an epic session it was. One question would surely not do it. I have got a lot of conversations to do with you, but I'll just keep it very short, valuing the time, as even you made out this concept of modern day Ibn Battuta. as the dynamics of travel since the 14th century to the present status quo has completely changed. And me being a very freaky traveler, a wanderlust, and a YouTuber myself, I do document places, but it's completely different from that of the perspective of Ibn Battuta. So as even, sir, you said, you asked...
Sorry, if you can just ask a question.
I'll just completely brief it up in one line now. As you asked, ma'am, about the modern day Ibn Battuta. So, ma'am, as per you, this is to all of you. And what would be the most eminent or the ideal model of the modern day Ibn Battuta now? Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, do you think you're an explorer?
Yeah, I do.
Right. And that's what is exactly common between you and Ibn Battuta, and that's where your travels will stand true for you. If you think it's not enough, let me take few more steps, let me go a little ahead, let me explore more, I think that is the kind of spirit that you need to make your travels really, really relevant and to actually go into the footsteps of Ibn Battuta. The footsteps of Ibn Battuta is not actually going to the physical places, but to have that zeal and spirit of an explorer and then staying true to your travels.
And also not to become another one. To let him be who he was and just be our own selves, little travelers. Maybe what he was, when he was traveling, I don't think even he realized that he'd make such a huge, huge
Yeah, he just started for a 16th
contribution.
journey.
Yeah. Thank you.
What they're saying is go to Delhi, Aligarh, but also come to Jaipur. And Battuta didn't have a literature festival at that time, but he would have definitely made it here. Sorry, the lady out here. Yeah.
If this is working. I'll ask a historical question if that's okay with you. And a brilliant presentation. I was very impressed by the map that you've chalked out. That's a beautiful thing to work on. We don't get that kind of a thing. So, Ibn Battuta writes in much detail and much rich information about India, its culture, and so many customs and practices. So what I want to know is that, when you go to a different culture, there are certain nuances that are difficult to navigate through. It's difficult to understand. He was not operating in a Persian-centric world. I mean, there were people who could interpret and who could translate things for him, but there would be things that get lost in translation or that get lost in the dialogue, in the interaction. So he must have been a great observer. But is there anything in his account that you come across where he's trying to navigate that world through different tools? So that I want to know. Thank you.
Through different tools, you said.
Yeah, what are the tools he's using? How is he trying to understand this culture and society?
Do you want me to take it?
Thank you.
So you have actually given the answer. He was an excellent observer. The kind of detailed things that he writes about, he is not understanding all of that. In fact, there is no rush or need or requirement to comprehend. There's a requirement to observe and to report. There's a very journalistic reportage sort of, thought behind what he sees. He does see quite a bit. There are things which he sees, he hears, and then he writes, putting a bit of his personal touch into it. But most of it, from whatever I read, is that he's an excellent and patient observer. He would, day after day, see those things happening, people rising at whatever time early or whatever that he writes about. So he is an observer, and that, I think, is his best tool.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just supplement it. Does he talk about it? How is he navigating it?
Yeah,
does he give us that
there's one more
inside
thing
information?
to it. He had no boundaries around him. After spending 6 years in India, he was as Indian as anyone could have been at that point of time. And I think that makes his, entire account really, really true to what he experienced. So his ability to mingle, not just observe, but to mingle with the people, with the culture, adopt the same practices. He was judge. I mean, on what grounds will you have someone who's lived all his life outside of India to come in India and become a judge? It's only when you actually know what is right and wrong in the cultural context.
I just want to add one thing. Your question, I think, has not been answered. So I think you're looking for a meta-textual reference, wherein he within the text says that I do this to observe. No. I mean, from whatever I read, no. He does not say, like, give a note or a footnote saying, I did this.
All right, so we're going to have to end the session here. Let me just thank Abhishek and Pratishtha for this really fascinating talk on Ibn A. Battuta, though I study migration, I really don't know so much about him. And, thanks to these guys and the work they're doing, everything you can see it on Electronic Village, on the website. If you go to the website of Electronic Village, you can get more information on this project. It's a very exciting project. I think at the end, as we leave, Ibn Battuta, historically known as a traveler. Today we've learned also a very important character in a project, a very important person in an award, a very important person in a Bollywood song. And in Morocco, there's a space center which is named after him, which tells me that in the future, the word Ibn Battuta will still live on through renaming some stars and galaxies. And as human beings go out into space, I think the spirit of Ibn A. Battuta will definitely live on. So with that, we'll end the session. Thank you. And